Hello viewers, welcome to another on-the-fly unscripted walkthrough. Today I want to do a walkthrough of using Oauth authentication with Laravel, and for example's sake I'm going to use the Etsy API. If you're not familiar with this, it doesn't matter, it's just an API to use as an example. Etsy's shopping cart software, kind of like Shopify. So what we're going to do here is say that we need to use Oauth to access their API endpoint. So the first thing that they tell us of any significance is that you are going to use the Oauth object from the PHP Oauth library. So if we don't do anything, you're starting off with a fresh Laravel project. Let's see what happens when we just start doing that. So I'm going to go to my Visual Studio Code, and I'm just going to start. So you can see this is my Laravel project. It's a normal setup. So I'm going to go and make a controller and just start doing stuff. So let's go to the routes and add a route and a controller just to test things with. All right, so I added a route. I'm going to just say the routes get Oauth customer token and get the Oauth controller will be the thing that handles it. So let's put controller in here. And let's put the stuff in here that we need to use. Okay, so I created a controller. I'm going to call it Oauth Controller, and I've just got some functions in here that map to kind of the storyline or process of how you create an Oauth token. And these are all in the Oauth specs. I'm not going to go into details, but pretty much all you're doing is saying, for a user on a website like Facebook, or in our case Etsy, I want them to type in their credentials and generate a secret key that we can get and store in order to use in the future, so we don't have to use their username or password ever again. So I'm sure if you've ever logged into any other website through Facebook, Google, or GitHub or anything like that, this is the same thing. This is what this is doing. So we're going to go through that process. So if we look at the, okay, so let me ensure, if we go to this route, let's make sure that this controller is set up properly. So if I go to the my local host where this is running, and go to okay, just had a spelling error. So if we go to the route, it looks like it works. Of course, nothing's happening because I didn't code it to do anything. So now let's code it to do something. So if, according to their example, we say, using the PHP Oauth library, this would look something like the following. So let's put that in there. And save that. Okay, we go back to our route and we refresh, and it says class Oauth not found. Okay. This is because the Oauth package is not included by default. So you need to install it into your Laravel system yourself, or actually it's your PHP system yourself. So again, I'm going to assume you already know about PHP and Laravel. So what you're going to do is, well, if we go to this documentation that actually points to it and says you were at the OAuth documentation. So every package in PHP is available on the, let's see, installation. Anytime you go to an installation of PHP package, they send you to the PECL website, and this is where you download. In this case, I guess I should have mentioned before, I'm on a Windows 10 machine. So I guess that's kind of important because on a Mac, it's completely different. So what you're going to do for Windows is you're going to download the DLL, and depending on which version you have of PHP, I have version 5.6, so I'm going to find one that handles 5.6. And you always want to use the thread-safe x86 version, not the x64 version. But the thing is that if things don't work, you can attempt to download the other DLLs and try them all, and maybe eventually through trial and error one of them will work. So you just download the zip file and you copy it into wherever your root PHP folder is. So you find out where your PHP installation is. Mine happens to be from a WAMP installation, but wherever yours is, there's going to be a PHP folder, and it's going to have an ext folder in it. That's where you're going to copy the DLL. So in the downloaded zip, it's a php_oauth.dll. So we're going to copy that into the folder. So I already did this, so I don't need to do it again. And then you're going to go back up to the PHP main folder, and in there's a PHP ini file. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, I'm not sure if it's always at the bottom, but you'll see something with extensions, and you're going to put this one here. So I already installed this, so I already have it. Extension equals php_oauth.dll, and make sure you put that in there. And then, of course, you're probably going to have to restart Apache or whatever you're running PHP through. So go ahead and restart it. And then we will have access to that package. So it's just going to be in there because the extension is available through the system once you put it into that file. So all we have to do is include it. So it's there to use, but we haven't included it or used it in our file, so we still need to do that. So I'm going to the using statement for OAuth, save it, and let's refresh it. Okay, I refreshed, and the other error went away, but now we have what we could expect, undefined constants for the consumer key, and that relates to right here, consumer key and consumer secret. These are things that are coming from your API. So you cannot, you have to have a key and secret from the API endpoint, and it's always the same. You sign up for a developer account, you fill out some forms, say what your app name is, what you're using it for, and then you submit that, and then they accept it, and they give you a consumer key and a secret. Standard process. So through Etsy, that is the same thing. So I need to go get my consumer key and secret. So for really laziness sake and ease of use, I'm just going to define two constants. And so this, I put this in the routes.php. You put the name of the constant you want, and then in here you put the value. So I'm not going to show what my keys are, but you would put your keys in here where these X's are. And then because the route file is always executed first, it's just going to define these global constants. So then when we go back to the controller, these things will exist magically. And if you put your correct token in there, it will work. So I'm going to put my keys in there, and then we'll go back and refresh it. Okay, so I refresh that route, and now it works. So it's working, it's connecting to, it's creating an OAuth object, but we're not doing anything yet. So let's do something. So the first step of OAuth authentication is to request a token, and that is a way to just start this whole process off and say that I want the user to actually put in their username and password and generate a secret token. So let's put in the uh, code to do that. So this is directly from the Etsy example, but this is relevant to any API, not just Etsy. So their request token URL is this, and then the second parameter, or first we're making a call to get request token, and then our URL is a specific URL for requesting a token. And then what's going to happen in that is it's going to uh, return you a token and a login URL where you get to redirect the user to uh, the page where they type in their username and password. So let's fill in the rest of the code. So when we get the request back, we are going to have a OAuth token secret. We're going to get a URL. And the thing is that when we get the token, this OAuth token secret needs to be persisted throughout the entire process, which goes across HTTP requests. And so if you don't persist this token, it's going to disappear. So I'm just going to put it into the session object in PHP just to be lazy. And so whenever you use session, you have to explicitly start session. Actually, I don't know if that's true. I don't know another way. I just do it this way. So you start the session, then you can store it in session with your own key and then the value. And then you're going to redirect the user to the login URL. This is going to cause the person to be taken to the other website, whatever it is, and it's going to make them ask them to fill out their username and password. So let's see that. Okay, looks like I ran into one other error. There's a request having to do with authentication with the certificates. So this is having to do with SSL, and the OAuth thing is trying to verify something because it's making, every client has to have a certificate to a SSL endpoint, but I don't want to deal with that. So let's just bypass it for now. And we can do that by setting the OAuth disable SSL checks, and we can quickly get around. Okay, so let's refresh this and redirect. So I'm using a redirect because that's part of the standard process, but redirect capability doesn't just exist. You have to import it into your code. So let's use that. Try and refresh. Oh, and you can see that we have been redirected to the Etsy website because this URL came back in our token request, and we just redirected the user to it. So now we are going, I guess I need to point out one more thing. Oh, yes, this the second parameter, that's the return URL. So let's specify where we want it to return to. So in our routes, we have get consumer token. So after we get a consumer token, we need to get the OAuth token. So let's make the route get OAuth token. Okay, let's save that and try it again. Or let's see. Oh, we don't need to try it again. We can just post it, and then it will get back to that URL. Oh, no, we need to restart. Okay, so we refreshed it, and now I'm already signed into Etsy, so it didn't ask me to type in the username password. If you weren't signed in, you would have to. So I'm just going to say allow access. Okay, and we're going back to the get OAuth token route. I didn't set up that route, so that's why that didn't work. So let me set up that route. Okay, set the route up, so now it's recognizing it, and it gave us an OAuth token and a verifier number. Okay, so we have that information available in our query string, and it redirected, because it redirected back to the URL you specified, which in this case is our local host, but in production it would normally just be your production site. So now we have to do something with this. So that route is just doing nothing in the controller, so let's make it do the next step. Okay, so what do we need to do? Well, we need to get the information from the URL that Etsy sent back to us, or whatever API sent back to us. So let's pull those out of the query string. Now we need to get the token that we got on the first request back out of session. Then we have to set up another OAuth request. So now we're going to use the same OAuth object, and we're going to use the same key. And remember that we need to disable SSL checks. And then we are going to set the token. So we're using this information to set the token. And remember, all of this is part of the spec of the OAuth process, which is built into the Oauth package we're using. So they're making it really easy. They're hiding a lot of the stuff going on. So just take it for granted that this is what you do. Otherwise, it can get really complicated. So let's, now after that, we got to make the actual request. Now that the user has typed in their username and password, which has generated a unique secret key that only could happen if they enter their username and password properly. We can now use that key, that special key, to make a request for the special OAuth tokens that will allow us to make calls from now on and never have to validate the username or password again. So that's going to be done with another function that does a HTTP request called the get access token. So you can kind of see the difference between up here is get the request token, and then down here it's get the access token. And here's the URL for Etsy. These are going to be in the instruction manual, and every API is going to have a different URL, but all you do is call it, and we've set the token up here with the request token and the secret key, and then here you have to add the verifier. Okay, once you do that, once you make this request, you are going to have the two pieces of information to store into your database that you will use from then on to make all requests. So here, I'm not going to use a database. I'm just going to put them back into session just for a quick, easy solution. And then if everything else works, we should just see a success message verifying that those keys are in your session to be used whenever you want. And again, right here, these two variables could be put in a database or any other persistent mechanism you wanted to use. Okay, so let's save that and let's refresh that. Okay, and remember that. So we've already gotten to this this route, and the information that we need is already there. So we're going to just refresh, and we might have a problem because if it takes too long to do this process, the API may invalidate these tokens, and you may have to start over. So let's refresh and see if it actually works. Okay, forgot one thing. Again, we're using session, so I need to start the session. And let's save and refresh that. Okay, so yes, we had a problem because the thing expired, so we need to restart this whole process. So let's try everything again. So we're starting off, we're getting the URL, redirects us to this page. Then we would either enter our credentials, or if we already have, we just push this button, redirects us back to the other page, which then says, okay, they've entered their username and password, they've given us permission. Now we will give you the secret keys that you can use from now on to make special API calls. So we get the success message, and now those keys are stored in session. You can't see them, but if you printed them out, or return them, or put them in the database, they would be there and you could see them. So now let's actually use these keys to make an API call. Okay, I'm going to call an API endpoint that is called get users, or it gets all the users. So I've added a route called get Etsy user. Actually, this is to get one user, sorry. So, and it's going to call the get Etsy user function. So I added that in here. So let's think about what we need to do. First, we need those tokens that we just saved. We saved them into session, so we need to get them back out. So we have to start the session, and we need to get the pieces of information out of the session. These are the two pieces of information that we need to make all API calls. And now we need to use the OAuth object to make those calls. So we invoke it as normal, or instantiate it as normal. Make sure to disable the checks. We have to always set the token. So now we're setting the token with our two secret keys that we have stored to be used forever. And these keys, by the way, will be valid forever until the user turns them off. Okay, so now we are using the OAuth object's fetch method to get a call API endpoint, which Etsy is users at / the ID, or the username of the person you want to get. This is my personal account. So I'm just going to get information about me. Then you're going to use a get method. This is a built-in constant to OAuth, so it will just exist there. We do have to add, let's see if this works. So once it makes the request, you just call get last response in order for it to get what the return was from the HTTP request. And let's actually just spit out the JSON, because Etsy happens to return things in JSON format. So I'm going to directly return that to the browser. So let's save that and go to that route. Okay, so you can see that we are at the get Etsy user route, and we have returned the raw JSON to the browser. I happen to have a plugin that formats the JSON into a nice, beautiful presentation, so we can clearly see it. You can see an object is returned with the ID, username, email. Probably shouldn't be showing my public key. Well, it's a public key, so I probably can show it. There's no sensitive information here. So we have made a successful request. So this approach is a standard process. The URLs are going to be different. There may be a few little odd things that you should do for the individual specific API endpoint, but by and large, what I did here is going to be the same for everything. And the important part is that you know how to install the Oauth package and use the Oauth object to get things going. So really hope that this helped somebody. Like the video, subscribe, email me with any questions, or leave comments with any questions, and I'll see you next video. Bye-bye.